All right, so welcome to another episode of Elite Psyche 100, the Mental Toughness Show. And as usual, we always have a special guest that we have on that we can talk with. Um, Before I do that, though, make sure you guys subscribe, man. Make sure you guys hit that subscribe button and like and all that kind of stuff. We got 10,000 subscribers now, which is great. The goal is get to 100,000. Then a gazillion, but right now we at 10,000. But that's good. So make sure you subscribe and hit the like button. And if you're not subscribing and you watching this, you must be hating or something. I don't know what's going on with you, but make sure you do that. All right. So today I got Dr. Hudley on this today. I met her, Jean Hudley. I met her, a few weeks ago at Subway. I was sitting outside, had taken my walk, and I actually was going to the UPS that's right next to the Subway off of Cobb Parkway. And she was coming out, but I saw her car, and she had a magnet on her car that talked about kids and things of that sort. So I got up and looked at it, and I asked her what she was doing and what kind of program that was, and that's why we have her on today. So we're gonna talk about that. So we're gonna welcome Dr. Jean Hudley to our Elite Psyche. So thank you for being here. I don't know if we got our round of applause button, but if we do, let's give her a little round of applause. I don't know. We might not can find it right now, so we'll hold.
That's fine.
The crowd waiting. All right, so Dr. Jean, let's jump right into this thing. I want to talk about what you are doing, and then I'm gonna back up. I got a few questions I want to ask you. Then I'm gonna back up and talk to you about how you got here. But what's the name of the program, and tell us what it's about.
So the name of our program is called Boys to Men and Girls to Win, Home and Sanctuary for Youth. At Boys to Men and Girls to Win, we teach life skills, anger management, conflict resolution, health and wellness, self-worth, self-esteem, etiquette, both table and cultural etiquette. And we also partner with organizations that teach technical skills. We also take the kids on field trips to get them out of their immediate communities and combine fun with learning. So that's what we do.
Okay, and did you say the age?
No, I did not. We work with kids 13 to 21.
13 to 21. Okay.
Yes.
All right, so let's back up a little bit and talk about how you got to Georgia. What made you come to Atlanta? When was that? And because you're out of New York, right?
Yes, I am. And when I came to Atlanta, it was, I often laugh and say it was before Christ because it was 1982.
Okay.
And my baby boy was 9 and he's now 51. So
Wow.
we've been here quite some time. Right. And so I have 3 children. And so the elder 2 were 16 and 15.
Okay.
And now they are 59 and 58. So I got some old children. But I'm very grateful for them. We came here at the behest of one of my sisters who was working for the Carter administration, one of his advisors. And they sent her here for some training. And when she came back, she said if a black person wanted anything, they could have it in Georgia, which I thought she was crazy. I said, that is impossible. She said they have the most beautiful homes and cars. And so I thought, well, why don't I go see? It was kind of um, deja vu because my parents, that is my grandmother and mother, were both born in Savannah and
Mhm.
Bainbridge, but we had never been south before, so I didn't know anybody here. But I took the leap and came anyway.
Okay. Atlanta specifically, though. When you said Georgia, I know some people probably like, no, you don't want to go to some parts of Georgia, but Atlanta specifically.
Right,
So,
right,
all right. So when you
right,
got here,
right.
what did you realize once you got here at the airport?
Um, so I realized that the airport was 6 or 7 times larger than the airport in New York, and I couldn't just put my leg out to stop a cab. So I I had to go to a cab stand, which was really crazy because a young man walked up to me and he could see that I was petrified, and he offered to help me. And from being from New York, of course, I looked at him like, I don't need your help.
Mm,
But if you would just tell me where I can get a cab. And so he gave me these directions, which I forgot about 3 seconds after he gave them to me. And he came. It was almost like he was following me. And when I looked, he was standing there again. And I was like, "What is it that you want?" He said, he put his hands up in the air. He said, "I come in peace." He said, "I work for Delta." He said, "But I'm off today and I came to pick my uncle up. So if you'll wait a few minutes, I'll be glad to take you where you want to go." So I had sense enough to know that even though I would tell the cab driver I was going to the Hilton, I didn't know that that's where he was going to take me.
right.
So, and then this young man, he showed me his ID, which I didn't believe was real, but I rode with him anyway.
That's the New York
So,
mentality. That's the
yeah,
New York mentality.
yeah. We don't trust anybody, but Georgia has taught me a little differently. However, it was crazy because when I got in his car, he had the most beautiful candy apple green old antique car. It looked like it had just been dipped in paint. And I said, he's got to be the biggest dope dealer in Georgia. Because because I never knew anybody in New York that didn't
Right.
have that kind of car that wasn't in the street. So
Right.
that was my reality.
You're right.
That was my reality. So so as we're riding, so mind you, I only had $600 in a round trip ticket. That's all I had. And I had directions from who I always say was a hater, who was doing very well in her business, and I had no business, and
Mhm.
told me to go to the Hilton. So when we got in the car and I told this person where I wanted to go, I guess he looked at my luggage and looked at me and knew that's not where I wanted to go. Because he said, he said, well, he said, Gene, I don't mean to be prying. He said, but you must have a lot of money. So I thought, Lord, now he's going to take my
Right.
$600.
Right.
And I said, well, what makes you think that? He said, because the Hilton, the cheapest room there is $75 a day. I said, well, that's
Th-
not where I want to go
so
because
wait a
I
minute.
need to stay a little while.
It was the 1982, right?
Yes.
Okay, $75 a day was Yeah, that was up there.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yes, $75 a day probably was a lot in
Yeah, yeah,
1982.
yeah, yeah.
Certainly, it was a lot for me.
Right, right,
And
right.
so I asked him to take me to a hotel on a bus line. And he took me to the Mark Inn on 285 in Washington Road. And it was beautiful over there, and um, I looked at the billboard and it said 24.99. I said, oh, I might be able to stay a week,
Yeah, yeah.
and and then I looked across the street and I said, saw a Motel 6 and it was 14.99. I said, well,
Nice.
it can't be that bad. It's right across the street. So that's where I went, and that's where I stayed. I
Wow.
stayed there, yeah, for about 3 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks before I started looking for a job.
You know,
And
I know exactly where that is. I told you my aunt lived in Park South,
yeah,
directly across the street from there. And
right, right.
so
So it was
yeah.
beautiful over there. And I was like, oh, there's a whole lot of rich people that live over here. I remember.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because where I was living, I was walking 5 flights of steps every day, in order to live in a decent neighborhood. So
Hmm.
I thought this has got to be movie stars have got to live over here.
people, people who come to Atlanta now was like, really? Yeah, that was the
Yeah,
spot. Washington
yeah.
Road, Camp Creek,
They would never believe what
oh
was over
man,
there. It was
Campbellton Road,
beautiful.
yeah, Campbellton Road, all of that. Yeah,
Yeah, and
that
look,
was
I wound up being one of the movie stars that lived, that lived in Park South
okay.
because, yeah, yes, because I would walk past that apartment complex and I would look, and I said one day, I said, I'm just going to go in there and see how much those rich folks pay to stay in there. And I went in the office, and the lady said, can I help you? And I said, yes. She said, are you looking for an apartment? I said, I am. She said, how many rooms do you need? I said, 3. She said, do you want a flat or a house? I was like, house. Of course I want a house. I said, a house. She said, well, I have a 3-bedroom townhouse, 2.5 baths, a patio, washing machine and dryer, dining room. I was like, God, I was holding my breath. I said, well, how much is that? She said, $599 a month. Tony. I said, what did you say? I was
uh,
like, Lord, I'm gonna move in tomorrow. Yeah,
five
yeah.
ninety
And
nine.
so that was my experience. And
Wow.
um, you know, I I looked for a job about 3 days, no, about a week before I looked at that apartment. And I got on the bus, and I got down to, I asked the bus driver, can you please let me know when I get to town? And he was like, oh boy, it's one of them. So, during that time, you look for a job in a newspaper,
Right.
and so I was going to apply for a job at Georgia Pacific. And so when I got off the bus, I stopped this lady and I asked her if she knew where it was. And she told me that she never came to town. And I could not understand that. I was like, well, where do you live? She said, I live on the south side. I don't come to town. But she said she was looking for a job, a program, some kind of programming position. which I really didn't believe, but I didn't question her. And
Hmm.
so she said, "Do you know where MARTA is?" I said, "What's MARTA?" She said, "That's the transit system." I said, "Was that the bus I just got off of?" She said, "Yes." I said, "No, I don't." And so we went our separate ways, and I went straight to the telephone booth. That's when they had telephone booths. So you know that was a very long time ago. And I dialed 411 and asked for MARTA personnel. And MARTA, that's when people answered the phone in HR. And she said, the lady told me they had two positions open, one for secretary and one for computer programmer. So I was like, oh, because I wanted to apply for a secretarial position. So I ran and I looked for the lady that was looking for computer programming. And we took the bus together. The job required that I knew Pittman Gregg, which is a old school form of shorthand that was used with pencil. And I did not have that skill, but I had a degree in court reporting. And that's what I told the receptionist, and she informed the interviewer who asked me to come back to his office, and we sat back there and laughed and talked for about 2 hours. And he said, "I want to give you this job. What about your steno machine?" I said, "Well, it's in New York." He said, "Well, when can you go get it?" I said, "I can't go get it until September 3rd. It was August 28th. He said, "Well, I can't hold a job for you that long." I said, "Well, I don't know what to do because I can't go home before then. That's because that's when I booked my flight." And so I went downstairs in the lobby and I went to the telephone booth and I called information and asked for Superior Court. And I asked for the court reporters division. And I spoke to a court reporter and asked them if there was a place where I could lease a steno machine. And they said no, they were all in Kentucky. I'm like, Kentucky? So how you get them fixed? He said, "We keep two." And he said, "But call Brown's College of Court Reporting and maybe they'll help you." And that's who allowed me to use the machine. I had to give them $300, and they told me when I brought the machine back, they would give me my money back. And
Wow.
so I was still in the lobby of MARTA. So I called upstairs to let the interviewer know. He said, "You have got to be kidding." I said, "No, I'm not. I'm getting ready to go get lost on this bus, but I'm going to go get that machine." And I tested, that was like on a Tuesday. I tested that Friday and I was hired
Wow.
in the construction division. So, and then, so when I got back to the hotel, that's when I walked up there and looked at that housing unit, Park
Okay,
South.
at Park South. Well, let me ask you this:
Yeah,
how did you
yes.
get into community service? Then how did that happen?
Well, after being here, well, when I was at home, when my kids' friends ran away from home, they came to my house. Okay. And I would contact their parents and say, "Your child is here. I'm going to talk to him. Give me a few days with him and I'll send him back home."
Right.
So I did very well with communicating with male youth. It was just a strength that I had. And
Hmm.
so when I came here and was introduced to the CASA program, which is a program that was created by a sister in DC, in support of defects because we didn't have enough case managers to manage all of the children that were in foster care.
Mhm.
And so they created this voluntary program called CASA. So a CASA is a court appointed special advocate for child abuse victims. And they act as the eyes and the ears of the court. So when a child is removed from the home and placed in group homes, shelters, or foster care homes, the CASA goes out there to make sure that they're getting the services that they're supposed to get and the services that these providers are being paid for. So I did that for 8 years, exclusively as a volunteer. You know, I never got a dime for it, never looked for any money for it. But it was
Mhm.
through that experience that I developed this passion to work with these kids because what I saw was a lot of holes in the process, and I didn't see kids getting what I thought they needed in order to be successful.
So, what do you think is different about your response to kids compared to other people when they're dealing with, you know, kids, young kids?
Well, I think part of it is um, when you have your own story
Hmm.
and you listen to theirs, a lot of it is similar, you know. And for me, a lot of what the kids have been through, I had experienced myself. So I was empathetic. I understood some of the reasons for their behavior.
Hmm.
Um, and I was transparent. Um, Mostly, you know, you don't
Okay.
tell everything.
Right. Right.
You do share whenever it needs to be shared, you know, and then but you deal with a lot of people that point fingers that have their own um issues,
Hmm.
but act as though they don't. And so the kids, they're not as willing to share what is going on with them. So when they're not, then you really can't help them
Hmm.
because they don't feel, they feel judged, you know, they don't feel understood. Now being understood doesn't mean that they're not held accountable,
Right.
but it's when you hold them accountable, you don't put them out of, like I had a community center, I used to put them out all the time, but you put them
Hmm.
out and then you let them back in. And when you do that, they're more apt to ask to come back in, you know, and they'll
Hmm.
say, I'm sorry, you know, for what they did. And so that's been our mantra. And to get them out of the environments that they're in, because if you don't expose them to something else, then they tend to do the same thing with the same group of people.
So, what is your long term and short term goals with the program?
Well, long term, I mean, short term, I want to have a building of my own in the community
Hmm.
where we can have a day program that will work with kids who are high school dropouts, and provide academic, soft skills, technical skills, and workforce development skills for that particular age group. For those that are still in school, we would like to have a weekly after school program, which is something that we're launching as we speak um, in August.
So, how would that? How?
Long term,
Go
okay,
ahead.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
I'm
Go. No.
sorry.
Go. No. No. Go ahead. Hit the long term. I'm sorry.
So long term, we have developed a plan to establish a residential program, a 3-year residential program on 50 to 100 acres of land where we will start with 42 kids in 7 homes. These kids will be kids that are being released from the Department of Juvenile Detention, because many of them don't have any place to go.
Mm-hmm.
They can't go back home for various reasons. So we want to embrace them in a learning facility where we will work on the various skills they need in order to be productive survivors. And our end goal is to set them up in their own businesses. So once they go through our program, and we're talking about having a public school on the property where they don't have to deal with external peer pressure. Any peer pressure they deal with will be among their own immediate peers. We want to have a husband and wife team in each one of those homes, so they know what a family looks like. It will be there will be some guidelines that those parents have to abide by in order to meet, in order to fill those positions, because we think that we need to set some solid foundations for them, especially since they may not have come from households where there are two parents in the household, or two parents that don't have a lot of the issues that some of our parents have.
All right. So your organization is Boys to Men, Girls to Win.com, right? That's the URL, Boys to Men, Girls to Win.
Yes, that's the website.
All right. So what are your
.org. Boys to
dot,
Men,
okay.
Girls to Win.org.
.org. Okay. What are your current needs with the organization?
So we need funding in order to pay a program manager, a program manager, program development. Okay, and we need money to pay instructors to teach the classes that we want, that we think will help them be productive.
Okay. And
So, mhm.
no, go ahead.
So, as I said, they are the children need to be able to get out. So we need the funding to pay for the programming, and the funding to include in that programming. We need transportation to get them to off-site locations, because each time we take them, and we do, okay, we have to rent 15 passenger seat vans, and then we're hauling them also in our vehicles. So we have taken as many as 30 kids to the mountains. Okay, and the facilities that we stayed in, we're blessed enough to secure housing that was, for the most part, donated to us in order to provide that opportunity for the kids. And during those trips, we teach event planning and entrepreneurship, and they have learned carpentry and entry-level electrical skills. So all of those skills are taught off-site. And so it costs money, and then we have to feed them 3 times a day. So we take boxes of food,
right?
Because that when they're somewhere else, they're hungry all the time.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So and then we reward them. So we have scholarships that we give kids as they progress. We have a yearly fundraiser where we recognize even the smallest progression,
Hmm.
because they're always acknowledged for anything they've done wrong across the world. So
Right.
we make sure that at our event, which is called Boys to Men and Girls to Win, Sneakers and Tucks. So, by the way, I guess I should mention this. We've only been working with girls for the last 4 years. And that's because God made me do it. I didn't want to do it.
Ha!
I I was kicking and screaming. But he always wins.
So
But the
you
girls
prefer
need it.
boys working with boys?
Yes, I
Why?
always preferred boys to girls, because even when you straighten them out, when you discipline them, they're not calling you a bunch of names.
Oh
You know
wow.
what I'm saying? They don't take you there. You know what I'm
You
saying?
just you said, but the girls
They
do.
they just them girls, woo, them girls that make their mamas jump on you. You know what I'm
Wow.
saying? But Tony, in all honesty, my experience with them really started um, at it's called Angela's House. And
Mm,
Angela's House was a program for former youth prostitutes. Okay.
mm.
And they would call you out your name in a minute and then call you grandmama the next. Can I call you grandma? After they done called you, you
Yeah.
like, you can't wear them thongs nowhere. No, my mama gave them to me. Well, we're going to send them back to your mama because you're not wearing them here. But these are kids that have been subject to abuse. They
Mhm.
just you know, it was terrible, but I developed relationships with them because, see, once they know that you genuinely care about them, then you have far less problems out of them.
Mhm.
So that was my introduction to working with girls, and that was about 10 years ago. And then I said, I don't want to do that no more, God. And then he came back. He came back.
Hey.
He said, cooled off now,
Yeah.
right? So yeah.
Wow.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. So
Okay. What challenges do you have with the parents, versus the kids, and like what kind of?
yeah. So, part of it is, we as parents, and I have to include myself, when you're talking to your kids about whatever it is for their benefit, despite where you are, because I'm quick to tell a parent, when I was disciplining my kids, it wasn't because I was what society might say is the perfect parent. I had my own issues, but I had
Mhm.
boundaries that they could not cross. Okay. And there were boundaries that I didn't cross in front of them.
Right.
However, um, all parents aren't the same. Okay. We all have our different weaknesses in different areas. And when your child will listen to somebody else that in your mind is no better than that's what they're thinking. Well, what's so great about them? I feed you every day.
Right.
In their mind, I take these butt whippings to feed you. Okay. Whatever they go through, they resent their kids growing under somebody else's
Somebody else.
leadership.
Okay.
Yes. And so that has been a problem for me because, I mean, how do I tell a kid, don't go home? And I remember I had to tell two kids this, don't go home and talk about me.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Don't go home and talk
Yeah.
about me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because,
I
yeah,
understand that. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. And so they'll go home and say, Miss Jean said, and Mama Jean and Miss Jean and Miss Jean. And she like, if you call her name one more time, you
Right.
know.
Right.
But I try to explain to these parents that I'm not here to take their children. I'm here to support them, to help them
Hmm.
with their children. I never talk against them to their children. I tell them, your parent, your mother is imperfect. That's the bottom line. But at the same time, I talk to the parents and I say,
Hmm.
what you're doing is not helping your kid.
Right.
I tell them the truth as I understand it, but I'm not demeaning. I'm saying I'm willing to help you with this. If
Yeah.
you're open. So, but that has been my biggest challenge. And the other thing is that and it happens with a lot of women, when they don't make it with a man, um, for whatever reason, okay, and this man goes on to develop a relationship with someone else that they appear to be happy with, the other woman, many times, and I've seen it so many times, resent them for it, for being
Hmm.
happy with someone else, for not being, for having, maybe they have grown, matured, and understand that they don't have no business putting their hands on no woman. Maybe
Hmm.
they're dealing with a woman that has drawn some lines that said, you can't do this to me. Now you can come over here, but we're going to do this another way. And
Hmm.
so a lot of times women resent that, so they alienate these men from their kids, which is a problem.
Yeah.
It's a big problem because it doesn't mean because they didn't get along with you that they won't be good fathers to their children.
Yeah. I find the same thing when I go into the school system to work with kids, and we go over different books, we talk, and they go home and tell their parents,
Right.
and that same thing happens. After a while, you hear the kids saying, "Well, my mama kind of disagree with that. My mama don't think that you should," and
Yeah.
it's a battle. It's a battle. I understand that.
Yes.
But that same thing happens in business. If you are in a business and you got teams of people and one leadership group and another leadership group, and somebody in your group learns from another group, and boy, you don't want to hear that. And I can understand. So what's your success rate for doing the
Well,
program?
I have, in the 22 years I've been doing what I do, I've worked with at least 5,000 kids and young adults. Um,
Hmm.
because part of the population I have worked with um, had some juvenile history, some criminal history. I have um, been exposed to um, the challenges that lead up to their adult criminal behavior. And because of that, I have um, vested in working in um, adult and juvenile reentry,
Hmm.
in an effort to help with employment and the skills that they need to to reintegrate themselves into society after being in juvenile detention for however long, because being in those environments don't always, most of the time, they don't make you better.
Right.
Yeah, unless, of course, those people that I continue to work with and work close to now did 27, 25, 16 years, and they are great community advocates. They do great things in the community, but they had to be gone that long, before they got to a point where they understood they had to change their mindset.
Mm-hmm.
My goal is to try to get the kids before they have to do that much time. I don't want them to do any time, but if they
Right.
do, I would like to have some influence on redirecting them. That is my goal, and that's what we do. That's
Okay.
what we do.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up here. Give us your last thoughts on, or your thoughts on the program, and what do you want people to know, about this program, and again, what do you want people to do exactly? I know you said donate. Is the donate button on the website?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All
Yes,
right.
it is.
So tell the world what you want them to hear about what you're doing that they don't know.
So, what a lot of people, I think, don't know is that operating a nonprofit organization is a very expensive venture. Had it not been for donors, I mean, and people donate in different ways. People that donate furniture, people that donate their time, that donate their skills, people that donate their monies to help us provide the services that are needed, because these services cost money.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do it without money. We need people that have a genuine heart for working with these kids. We need people to understand that you, if you don't love this,
Mm-hmm.
this is something that you shouldn't do.
Do right.
Yeah, because um, some kids are a whole lot harder to work with than others.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take the time to invest in them, you will see you will see changes that you cannot believe. But it
Right.
takes time and it takes money. They need clothing. You know what I'm saying? We've had when I was in a community center, we had a clothing pantry where the kids would come if they had interviews for jobs. I could dress them, and we ain't dress them in no garbage. I mean, if it
Right.
had to be ironed, I had an ironing board, and we made sure if they didn't know how to iron, I taught them how to iron. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We had special events where we had other younger kids come out and show their different tell their different success stories and show how they moved from one level to the other. I have a young man that I just saw present. I was at a reentry conference, and he got locked up for 10 years for selling dope down in Macon. This young brother had a father that had diabetes, and due to the diabetes, he lost his legs. So while he was in prison, all he did was research different doctors, I guess different ways they dealt with diabetic patients. Now he is a doctor. He majors in some kind of science that's relative to diabetes. He's at Hunter College. He's he just got this multi-million-dollar grant from CDC, but he has 10 years in prison
Wow.
behind him. Wonderful, wonderful young man. So my point is that we all make mistakes. I remember speaking before the Navy, naval officers, and they wanted me to come and talk about what I thought was wrong with the educational system. And of course, I told them they didn't have enough time. But part of but part of the problem is everybody doesn't learn the same way. And there's nothing wrong with that. We pay taxes. Okay, some of us pay taxes for kids that we don't even have. We've never had a child, but when our paycheck comes, that money that they take out goes to our public schools. We have to do a better job of working with these kids that are not retaining the same way. We need hands-on teaching so that they understand at the end of that project, when you put a title to what they did, it builds their self-esteem. They don't feel as illiterate because you walked them through. You said put this piece of wood has letter A on it, and you attach it to this piece of wood that has letter B on it. And when you attach those different components, you just created some kind of algebraic formula. So algebra. Oh, I do? Yeah. Yeah. That was something that they didn't have a strength in. So we have to be more creative about the way we work with our kids. Many of our kids are the product of the crack pandemic, and that stuff was in their parents when they were carrying them. So
Right.
you want to know why they can't remember certain stuff, and why they are ADHD. I am, and I'm not a crack baby, but I might as well be because I am ADHD WXYZ. I mean, I start. I'm telling you, I'm telling you, Tony. I will start one thing, and I never knew that I had it until I started working for these mental health agencies. I did it part time, and they were agencies that DFACS referred families to. Okay, so they were mental health and behavioral agencies. And so we were at a training one day, and the owner of one of the agencies came to the training, and he said, "My name is Dr. whatever his name was." He said, "I'm 45 years old, and I was just diagnosed with ADHD." I said, "Huh?" I couldn't believe it because I thought it was something that only little kids were diagnosed with.
Right.
He had it all his life. He just didn't know what the title was. So I understand, that I have ADHD, and I'm fine with it because it hasn't stopped me from doing anything. I just don't do it the same way that you do it.
Right.
And that's why it's easier for me to embrace these kids because I know where they are. I understand that if you are graduating from elementary school going to middle school, and when you get to middle school you don't know how to read, okay, in order for me to help you, if you are reading on a third grade level and you are expected to be on a sixth grade level, then I have to start you with third grade books. I've got
Mm,
to start you with third grade books so that we'll move from third grade to fourth grade. So incrementally, as I move you up, then you feel like you have accomplished something. I can't put you in a sixth grade book and you're reading third grade.
right,
It's discouraging. You
right.
know what I'm saying? So I just think that, and I'm not, um, everything that I know, Tony, I've learned from being there. I haven't
Hmm.
learned most of what I know from these college degrees I have. They don't mean
Right,
nothing.
right.
You got to be there, and so that's what I'm saying. We have to, I think, as a community, we have to be more involved, all right? We have
Hmm.
to um be more patient, be more creative, and also be willing to contribute to those that are putting the work in, so that we
Hmm.
can help these kids get off the street, you know um and understand that they are more than they think they are.
Right.
It's because this self-worth issue is big. It's the elephant in the room.
Yeah. When you
So
mention
when we
when you
don't.
mention
Mhm.
when you mention third grade level reading, most people don't even realize that Americans, the average American, reads on the eighth grade level. That's what most people, even
Right.
college graduates, are reading on
Right.
the eighth grade level.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so yeah. But you can feel your passion and your love for what you do, and I like how you said that if people don't love it, they don't need to get involved with it because of the
Right.
challenges that go along with it. But you want to see,
Right.
and I know you've seen success come from a lot of people, kids in your
Yes.
program, and
Yes. I mean, it's wonderful. I've got kids in the military. I've got kids that have started their own business. I've got kids that are working wonderful jobs. They're doing well. I'm going to tell you this little short story. I got a phone call from a kid last week. It was 3 days before Father's Day, and he called me and he said, "Miss Jean?" So I said, "Yes." He said, "Oh, thank God." I said, "Who is this?" He said, "This is Demario." I said, "No, Najari." I said, "Okay, who is that?" he said, he said, "Miss Jean." He said, "Me and my brother were in your GED class." I said, "Were you really?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Oh." I said, "I'm sorry, Najari. I don't remember. I work with so many kids." He said, I've been looking for you for, I know, almost 2 years. I said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah. And every time I looked up a Boys to Men, they sent me to Texas or California." I said, "Well, that's only because there are a number of Boys to Men organizations. They just spell different, you know."
Right.
So he said, "I just called to tell you thank you." I said, "Really?" He said, "Yes." He said, "Thank you." He said, you taking us on that bus trip to see that judge." So Judge Clarence Thomas came here to um, to present a, a wing of a new courthouse in Covington, Georgia. So I was in partnership with an organization, actually with the Koch brothers, and they
Okay.
sponsored a trip for about three organizations to go up to that ceremony. So I took them there. It was called a Tour for Justice. And so we went there. We also had the appeals court judge from Atlanta, who was born and raised in Marietta, Georgia. He went with us. Well, actually, he was up there on the podium with Judge Thomas, and then he had lunch with us. He sat down with us and had lunch with all of these kids in this large school. Miles College, I think, is the
Yeah.
school that sponsored the lunch. Yes, and then we came back and we went to Fulton County Superior Court, and the chief judge there talked to the kids in his chambers, and he remembered that. He said that experience was just very
Life changing.
impressionable. Yes. And
Mhm.
then this other brother, I'm so mad I can't think of his name. Um, he created this video that I showed him. I think he was starting a online bank with Andrew Young and Ti. What's his name? I can't think of his name, but I showed them his video, and he said in that video, Killer Mike.
Killer Mike. I was
I
gonna
don't
say
even
Killer
remember.
Mike. I was gonna say Killer
Yeah,
Mike, but
he
yeah.
said this video with Killer. Yeah, he said with Killer Mike. I don't even remember what the video was about. All I know is that anything that I could show them that I thought that might change or improve the way they thought, that's what I did. But so I said, well, what are you doing now? He said, I'm a mechanic. I said, really? I said, and where? He said, at Toyota. I said, at Toyota. He said, yes, ma'am. He said, in Morrow, Georgia. I said, that is wonderful. He said, Miss Jean, I just wanted to call and thank you. So those calls come to me periodically, and Tony, they come sometimes when I get very um discouraged,
Courage. Right.
and
Right.
God just sends, because I'm like, Lord, I'm tired of
Yeah.
doing this by myself, tired of fighting, tired of begging my people to help their own people.
Well,
And
it,
he
well,
always says, send somebody.
well, he sent me. So we're gonna work together and do
Yeah,
some
he
stuff.
did.
Yeah.
And
We're
I,
gonna do
I
some
and
things.
I appreciate it so much, but
Mhm.
those are the kinds of the things that happen that just remind me that what I do and other organizations like ours, what we do is important,
Mhm.
and we don't know it. That one kid may influence 10,000.
Right.
That one
Right.
kid, a lot of us, we don't feel good because we don't have the capacity to serve 500 kids at one time. We may serve 50, but you don't know who the gems are
Right.
in that small group
Right.
and how they can help encourage and motivate other kids. So that's what we do.
All right.
And I
Well,
get
look.
very emotional when I talk about my
I
kids.
see. I see. I see. We're gonna we're gonna do another one of these and kind of like a panel. I got a partner of mine who has a uh non he has a what's the name of that organization? He got an organization up in Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay.
He actually served 22 years in prison, and when he got out,
Okay.
he started this organization. He actually started the organization while he was in prison. I met him about two
Yeah.
years before he came out, and
Wow.
he has this program with kids up in Ohio. It's a nonprofit, and it'd be great for
Okay.
y'all to talk because I'm sure we can
Yeah,
uh,
I
you
would
know,
love to.
make something happen. We can do some of that. So, but appreciate your
I
time.
would love.
We're gonna okay. We're gonna wrap it up now. Thank you, Dr. Jean,
Okay. Well,
and
thank you so much
yeah,
for having
right. And I'll
and
be talking
listening
to
to
you.
me rant.
I understand. I understand. I
But I
understand your passion.
appreciate your time.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll be talking.
All
See you later.
right. All
All right.
right.
Thank you.
long. Thank you so much. All
All
right.
right, this
Bye-bye.
been another episode of Elite Psyche, and we had Dr. Jean on. So make sure you subscribe and make sure you like and comment, and we'll see you on the next episode.